Hey everybody, welcome to Noon O'Clock. I'm TJ Carpenter here on Phantom. Hope everybody is having a great week. Broncos are 2-0, so that should make your week even better. Our question this week has been, 2 weeks in. What can you say definitively about the Broncos that is true? Because it's 2 weeks in, and a lot of people are making a lot of crazy statements about all kinds of people. Patrick Mahomes is like the best quarterback in the history of the league ever 2 games into his career. So I think we're getting a little off track here with declarative statements. I do think, though, if we're boiling it down to its fundamentals, I think you could say you like the Broncos pass rush and you like their running game. There's some things that you may not like about the Broncos, and we'll get into those as well. But we've got a lot of great stuff to get to on the show today. Your comments as well. So as always, just make sure that you put your comments in there. Chad Jensen is going to be joining us today from Mile High Huddle. So we're looking forward to that here in just a moment. But first, as always, we want to remind you of our great sponsors, Brent Malia Properties with Coldwell Banker. Go to tjsagent.com. Brent will hook you up. Brent helped my wife and I out in a big, big way finding our home here in the Denver market, and he can help you as well. So go to tjsagent.com and make sure you hook up with him, because if you're looking for a house in the Denver market, I can't think of somebody who's better at finding what you want than Brent. Also, too, go to PlatteRiverMortgage.com. Platte River Mortgage. Sean Steed and his crew there will help you out. Buying, selling, refinancing does not matter. Platte River Mortgage and Investments has been helping clients for a long time here in Denver. They can help you out as well, like they helped us. And then, of course, Henry 16th Street Tavern. We're going to be down there, downtown Denver, and we are going to be we're going to be watching the Broncos game there, and we're going to have a lot of great games, a lot of fun out there. Of course, you can download the appetizer coupon on our Phantom page and get a free appetizer next time you're in Henry's Tavern. So do that as soon as you can. Get some free food. Go there one time. If you haven't been there before, you'll want to go back. It is an excellent place to pregame, postgame, or game at Henry's Tavern. All right, bringing our guest in now, Chad Jensen from Mile High Huddle. He is joining us now. Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, all right, let's get down to it. I said 2 weeks in, what do you think you know about the Broncos? After watching them for 2 weeks, what can you say, like, I believe this is true about Denver?
Well, I mean, it's not very definitive, but I think the Broncos are still very much a work in progress. I think that definitively Joe Woods needs to get better as a play caller. That's been one of the biggest gaps or differences between Wade Phillips and Joe Woods. Is Wade Phillips is one of the best situational play callers as a schemer in the NFL. You know, not a great head coach, not a great micromanager, but in game, in the moment, he knows how to adjust. He knows what blitz packages, what coverages to throw at an opposing quarterback. And Joe Woods just isn't quite there yet. You know, Wade Phillips had 3 decades worth of live bullet experience to get him to that point, and Joe Woods, not anywhere near that in terms of experience, and it really does take experience to hone that ability. And, there's some talent involved and some nuance there. So I think Joe Woods needs to get a lot better as a play caller. But Case Keenum, he's got to stop throwing picks too.
Well, yeah, and, that was a big part of what I wanted our discussion to be on the show today, which was, Case Keenum came in and he was billed as definitively better than Trevor Siemian. He's going to be better than what you had. And 1 week in, that's what everybody was saying. It's like, okay, well, he threw 3 picks, but they won the game. He's better than what they had. How much better? I mean, I think he is better, but not like a ton. He definitely looks a lot more like Rams Case Keenum than he does Vikings Case Keenum, if that's fair to say, at least to this point.
I think that's fair to say. He's definitely resembling more the Case Keenum we saw with the Rams than the Case Keenum last year. But one thing to keep in mind, too, about Case Keenum is, he is a transplant. He's in a new offense. He's working with new role players. This is all still brand new as far as the chemistry and the timing and just really knowing the playbook like the back of his hand, trusting his O-line. And I think he's getting there. But here's what I'll tell you is the biggest difference between Case Keenum and Trevor Siemian. In the case of Case Keenum, if you put Trevor Siemian in that role, let's say week 1, that first interception in the first half, Siemian would have gone into a shell. There would have been no coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at that in both weeks, week 1 and 2. When Case Keenum kind of fell flat on his face, made a mistake, he rallied back. Now in week 2, it took him a little bit longer to rally back. Obviously, it took almost an entire half for him to kind of put things together. But what you got to love if you're going to try and find something to hang your hat on about Case Keenum, there's 2 things. One is his will to win is he doesn't go into a shell. Okay, so that's good. He's got the mental toughness, mental fortitude, self-belief to come back. And the other thing is his guys believe in him. And that's certainly not something Trevor Siemian had last year. So when they do get into a hole and they're down 12 points in the fourth quarter, the guys actually believe that they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, kind of like with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning instilled that belief in his teammates, and you got to have that ability to galvanize the dudes. And I think Case Keenum brings that to the table. So long as he can keep executing when the chips are down, I think the Broncos will be fine. But if they can eliminate those early mistakes, I mean, this is a Broncos team that actually has the ability to dominate its opponents, but they got to cut out the mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people who feel like, well, if they hadn't had those turnovers the first week of the season, they would have beaten the Seahawks pretty handily. Although I don't know if that's necessarily true about the Raiders game. I don't know if people are giving the Raiders enough credit. I mean, Derek Carr threw for 91% completion. People have gotten it into their heads that like Derek Carr is a crappy quarterback, and I don't know why that is. Because every time I watch him, I don't think he's like elite. I'm not saying that he's, that he's Aaron Rodgers, but he's better than most people give him credit for. And I think that kind of shone through. I don't know if I buy into this notion that like the Broncos are 2-0 because of the teams they played. I think they're 2-0 because they figured out a way to win in late game situations because they were behind late in both of those games and still found a way to win.
That's right. And Derek Carr, I mean, the thing, I've always been a big Derek Carr fan in terms of just his ability as a quarterback coming out of college. Derek Carr's biggest problem was he lost Bill Musgrave right as he was turning the corner. I mean, those 2 years that Musgrave spent in Oakland, it's the correlation between Derek Carr, becoming a Pro Bowl quarterback. I mean, there's a reason why. And then when Musgrave leaves after the 2016 season, he gets fired by Jack Del Rio for some unconscionable reason. Derek Carr goes into a shell. The team goes, down the tube, so to speak. And now you've got the Gruden era. So that's the biggest thing. Derek Carr is a very good quarterback. He's still on the upswing in terms of his development. He's not quite there yet. They paid him, but yeah, he's formidable. And the thing with the Broncos, I mean, they allowed 29 completions on 32 attempts on Derek Carr. And the biggest thing was, and Vance Joseph talked about it the day after the game, but they were so caught up in trying to take away Jared Cook, the tight end, and just they wanted to keep everything in front of them as far as coverage, that they were allowing 7 and 8 yard cushions pre-snap, and Derek Carr was just taking advantage of that underneath all day long, and the Broncos were just giving him those completions, and they didn't really adjust. If you go back and watch the tape, they didn't really adjust till late in the third quarter, and that's when things started tightening up. So again, that goes back to Joe Woods. I know Vance Joseph has his fingerprints on it as well. I mean, it's up to him, to have the final say in things, but Joe Woods just has to get better because those DBs, we published a piece today at Mile High Huddle by Eric Trickle that kind of goes into depth on how these cornerbacks have managed their targets, what they've relinquished individually, and it isn't pretty. This I guess it's 4 guys. They've relinquished over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, 2 of which have come at the expense of Chris Harris.
Ask your questions for Chad here, and we will get those up there on the screen and answer them as we go on throughout the show. Chad's going to be joining us. You're joining us here from your car, it looks like. So it looks like you're on the go. So I know that your time's a little bit limited, but I would like people to ask some questions for you if they have any. We've got some people on here agreeing with you. John Misak saying he agrees that he said Woods should have been fired last year. I was a little surprised that he kind of got a free pass. A lot of that, I'm guessing, comes back to the no-fly zone and his relationship with the previous defense and all of that. But, I mean, we're in a new world now, man, and Joe Woods says all the way back to last season, my criticism of him last year was he, doesn't make adjustments at all. They didn't make any adjustments. And then Aqib Talib came out in that SI article in the offseason saying, yeah, we didn't make any. He said basically the adjustments were half as much. He's like, we were doing half of what we were doing the previous season, that's not good to hear, I think, if you're a Broncos fan. For sure. But I actually think that you could make the argument. This is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, especially people who are still riding high off of the Super Bowl win in 2015 and the no-fly zone. But I think you can make an argument that the offense is the better unit of the two right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe, but I mean, I wouldn't argue that. I really wouldn't argue that point because the front, I wouldn't even say the front seven's been great. The defensive line has been great. The off-ball linebackers have been inconsistent. Brandon Marshall, he dropped 25 pounds in order to be more light on his feet. It is costing him big time as an off-ball linebacker in the run game. He's not getting off blocks. He's getting washed out. And I'm telling you now, I'm knock on wood, but it's only a matter of time before the injury bug catches up with him, being at 225, playing in the box like that. Todd Davis, now he's been good against the run by and large. He had 5 solo tackles in week 2, but he's had a couple penalties this year, one of which cost the Broncos a takeaway in week 2, which could have completely changed the complexion of the game. And then he also has just been terrible in coverage. So that front seven hasn't been working on all cylinders, and the back end. That's what's really killing the Broncos is that back end. The safeties and the corners have just not been towing the line, so to speak. And Joe Woods, the thing you got to keep in mind is he is a really good coach. Okay, there's a reason why the Broncos were willing to let Wade Phillips walk because they didn't want to lose Joe Woods. They felt like he was his star was burning bright. He was going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. They wanted it to be in Denver. His unit was the number 1 passing unit in the NFL 2 consecutive years, and the Broncos almost had the chance. Last year, they had the chance to, in an unprecedented fashion, finish as the number 1 passing defense for the 3rd straight year. They fell short by 3 or 4 spots. I think they finished number 5 off the top of my head. But still, I mean, he knows his stuff. He just has to get better at situational football as a play caller. You talked about it with that Talib interview. He's got to get better at adjusting in game. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the type of learning curve he's staring at right now only comes with live bullets. So, in other words, fans are going to have to endure the ups and downs of Joe Woods figuring out how to be a defensive coordinator in this league. And let's just hope the offense can continue to do its part in terms of helping, bridging the gap when the defense isn't exactly living up to its previous reputation.
I got to be consistent here. I do think it's different for quarterbacks than it is for other positions. But I said that Mahomes has yet to play from behind. So I think that that's probably a big reason why I'm not buying in just yet on what we're watching. But Philip Lindsay is another guy who through 2 weeks has just really, really looked good. And I got to be consistent here. Do you think that we know enough about Philip Lindsay to say, yes, that guy's good? That guy's going to carry the ball a lot. We need to get him the ball as much as possible.
Yeah, the only catch with Philip Lindsay is he's, barely 5'8" and he's 190 pounds. So, you can tell the Broncos are right now. It's like even in the first 2 games, he's out touched the ball over Freeman. That's not necessarily because the Broncos have designed it that way. It's just that when the chips were down, they needed some kind of an impact. That's where Philip Lindsay comes in. They don't want him necessarily touching the ball 15 to 20 times a game, not because he can't do phenomenal things, but because he's a small guy. It's one of the reasons he wasn't invited to the NFL Combine was his diminutive size. So that's the only thing you've got to worry about with regard to Philip Lindsay moving forward is just wear and tear, because we've seen he can carry the ball between the tackles. He is not just a gadget player like even Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles can, I guess, pound it between the tackles. But Philip Lindsay, I mean, his burst through the hole, they have such a phenomenal 1-2 punch because Denver can lull their opponent to sleep, so to speak, with Royce Freeman pounding it between the tackles. And Freeman's good in his own right, but it's literally a change of pace when Philip Lindsay comes in the game. How quickly he gets through the hole, it completely shocks and surprises the opposing defense. Even now that they'll be able to see it on film a couple times, live, that 4.3 speed in that burst, it's something special. So Lindsay's for real. He is legit. It's an indictment on all 32 NFL teams, including the Broncos, that he did not get drafted. The Broncos only get a little bit of a pass, and really they just got lucky that he grew up in their own backyard and he grew up a Broncos fan.
2 final questions here. The first of which is, was that Cortland Sutton catch a touchdown?
I don't know. I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I think that I think if it would have been ruled a touchdown in the first place, it would have stood. But no, I didn't see anything myself that made it conclusive. I mean, taking the orange-colored glasses off, I really didn't think that that was a conclusive touchdown. But if it would have been ruled a touchdown up front, it would have stood. Unfortunately, it was ruled incomplete, and that's why it was confirmed that way. Not enough conclusive evidence.
Yeah, that's probably right. I think you're right about that. All right, Ravens, Broncos this week. Ravens, we don't really know much about them. We know they're better than the Bills. What do you think about the Ravens in this matchup for Denver?
I'll tell you what, the Ravens they're just always one of those teams that you never really know what you're going to get. Over the last, let's just say during the Joe Flacco era, anytime the Broncos have played the Ravens, it's either a blowout or the Broncos are losing. Like, there's no middle ground. So it's hard to say what's going to happen here. The Ravens, for me, is still a team that I'm kind of having a hard time putting my finger on the pulse of what to expect. But I think even though Baltimore's a tough place to go into and win on the road, I think as far as an opening test for the Broncos as a road opponent, it's pretty juicy. Like, there's nothing really about that Ravens team that frightens me, worries me too much. If anything, it's just the fact that now with Case Keenum missing practice Wednesday with the sore knee, you got to worry about his availability, because he came out of college with, he suffered an ACL tear at college, in spite of all of his production and his records. He took a shot. There's a play in the fourth quarter, if you go back and watch that Oakland game, where Jake Butt starts as a fullback and he squirts through in a play action and he hits him right down the middle, probably his longest reception of the day. Case Keenum had to hold on to the ball for a second there, and it bought enough time for a Raiders defender to go low and shoot at his knees. I don't know. You got to worry about that knee. But if Case Keenum's good, I think the Broncos can keep this a game. And we know so far what the two games have shown us is that if it's within striking distance in the fourth quarter, you got to put your chips in on Case Keenum.
Great stuff, man. Loved having you on the show. We would love to have you back sometime again soon. 2-0 start for the season to the Broncos, so good for them. And I'm sure you're enjoying at least some of what you're watching. They are winning, so that's good. But I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about next week as well as the Broncos take on the Chiefs.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for making some time for me while I'm on the go. I mean, the way I look at it, TJ, is, if I can do radio spots at times from my car, I mean, what's the difference doing a video conference with my boy here from the car? So appreciate you bearing with me being on the go today.
For sure. Thank you very much, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, TJ.
All right. There is Chad Jensen, Mile High Huddle, and he is doing tremendous work over there. You need to check it out when you get an opportunity to do so. Yes, and this is going to be a little bit of an abbreviated show today, so I apologize for all the people who were maybe hoping to get a full hour's worth of show today, but we've got we got to cut the show short a little bit for some other reasons. But I always want to let people know that anytime we're doing interviews, it's not just my interview. If you ask a question that I think is good enough to ask our guest, we will put that up there and I will ask them. I'll let them know what your question is, and then we'll pass that along. I thought he was right about a lot of stuff. I am curious, though. I think a lot of Broncos fans are very cautious at this point. At least the reasonable ones are cautious about what to expect from this team. And as much as I think you feel good about being 2-0, you have to question a little bit of whether or not they are a 2-0 team. A team that because right now I don't think that what they've done has convinced anybody of anything. But you have to be overwhelmed. It has to be obvious to convince somebody of something quickly. And the Broncos have not been obviously better. And that's why I think a lot of people are still waiting. That's totally fair. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. Case Keenum or Case Tebow. Von Miller is a beast. Von Miller is a beast. Road game for the Broncos. Crabtree versus Harris, not the same ring. No, not the same. Or the chain. I think it's not a ring, it's a chain that you're looking for. All right, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank everybody for watching once again. And I know it was a really condensed version of the show today. We will get back into a full swing of things tomorrow. I want to thank everybody for watching. This has been Noon O'Clock. Later, y'all.